That Sober Guy podcast contains adult content, merciless truth, and emotional nudity. Listener discretion is advised.
Yo, what's up? Thank you for tuning in today. Thanks to Humans for bringing us in. Thanks to you for supporting the show. I'm Shane Raymer. You're listening to That Sober Guy podcast, and we help people stay sober. We also talk about drugs, alcohol, recovery, staying motivated, PMA, how to live a positive lifestyle, all that good stuff. And we like to have some fun in the process, so welcome. If you're first time listening to the show, I'm glad you're here, and we got some good content for you today. Our guest is David Krantz, and David's a health coach specializing in nutritional genomics, epigenetics, and the endocannabinoid system. And David also helps people understand how their particular set of genetics influences their nutritional needs, strategies for wellness, and why they might be more susceptible to addictive behavior. Before we get to David, be sure to check us out at thatsoberguy.com. You can also connect with us on Instagram at RealThatSoberGuy and on Twitter at Shane Raymer. Now, finding the right treatment option for addiction and mental health illness can be tough, and that's why we've continued to partner with Foundation's Recovery Network. Foundation stays true to their mission. They hold high ethical standards, and they provide treatment in a nationwide network of residential and outpatient programs. So generally, in anywhere throughout the country, there's going to be some sort of Foundation's treatment center nearby. They have individualized treatment plans, and they're focused on relationships, building those relationships for long-term recovery. If you want some more information on Foundations, their treatment centers, what they have to offer, how they can help you, you can go to foundationshelp.com/soberguy. That's foundationshelp.com/soberguy. Or you can just call 833-81-SOBER. It's 833-81-SOBER. You can talk with an admissions coordinator about treatment options that can answer any questions for you, and you can get some help for you or your loved one. Let's see. We got a live show coming up at the Hollywood Improv June 23rd with Skylar Stone, Matt McCarthy. We're going to have some other special guests down there as well. Tickets are $10 if you're in the Los Angeles area. Come out, support your recovery, support the recovery community, have a good time. We're going to have some good laughs, tell some good stories, and have some fun. So you can go to improv.com/Hollywood to get tickets. That's June 23rd, just in the next couple of weeks. It's on a Sunday. We did it early. I think the show starts at 4:30, so you can be back for Sunday dinner at that. So check that out. Once again, improv.com/Hollywood. All right, David Krantz, we're going to try this again because my dumbass didn't hit record the first time. So number one, welcome to the show, man. Thanks for coming on the podcast today.
Hey, thank you.
Yeah, man, it's so funny. I actually have a new piece of equipment that I'm using, and I haven't... I think I said I had never done that before. I think I have done it one time before, but it was years ago. And I'm so glad I caught it right when we started versus about halfway through the conversation. So that's good stuff. Yeah. So we're going to talk about all kinds of good stuff today. I had mentioned epigenetics, which I'm still trying to wrap my brain around what the hell that is. And obviously we're going to find out from your expertise today, the endocannabinoid system, how that relates to CBD, what that looks like from a human being perspective. But first, man, I just kind of wanted to get to know you a little bit. We had spoke a little bit beforehand how both of us were super big potheads back in the day. Let's start here, man. Well, let's do this first. What'd you have for breakfast today, bro?
I actually had some chicken broth that I was cooking overnight and started out my day with just a big mug of chicken broth.
Really? So you just drink the broth and that's it?
Just drink the broth. Yeah, I don't do that normally, but that's what was going on for my kitchen this morning.
Does that fill you up?
It actually did. I had a little bit of avocado and some salad with it a couple hours later. So I had to. Breakfast.
So how'd you get into epigenetics, man? What did that look like? Where did that start? Or maybe take us back to before when you were a big time pothead.
Yeah. So I'll start there because it kind of all ties in. I found weed when I was 14 and, I was the kid that wanted to get all my other friends high and thought everyone should be smoking weed because the world would be a better place. Right. That was my MO. And I, really looking back was not using it in a healthy way. It was really a way to escape my emotions and kind of distance myself from reality. And it wasn't until I was about 25 or so when that actually really hit me, and I started to understand that. And it was kind of like there were all these other factors in my life that had just built up. Like I was in this really toxic codependent relationship, not actually a romantic relationship. It was a work relationship. And I just like was really twisted up by it and realized like, okay, why am I believing this guy when he's telling me I'm a terrible person? Like there must be something actually deeper here going on.
Yeah. What an asshole.
Yeah. And so like, right. And it's all tied into that same sense of self-esteem and, just self-perception that, I think drives a lot of addictive behaviors. And so I had this just pressure from all these places, really asking me like, all right, what's actually going on here with you? And,
I want to mention real quick, cause you bring up such a good point about the fact of you're not demonizing weed or smoking weed. I got plenty of homies who smoke plenty of weed and they're functioning, and that's, they go to work and they do their thing. There's plenty of people who do that. So it's not so much, an issue of the substance. And I think once I started to look at that from within, it made it easier to help to learn about myself a little bit. So in other words, just kind of what you're saying, like you figured out that it's not that I'm smoking weed every day, 10 times a day. It's the fact of why am I smoking so much weed? Well, number one, yes, I like to be high sometimes. I mean, we can get that right out of the way, but there's a lot of underlining issues and it's hard to pull those out if you're high all the time. Does that make sense?
Right, exactly. And, I had to sort of use that willpower at first just to be like, all right, I'm stopping this so I can have some time to think, and, what ended up happening was once I did that and I guess we'll talk a little bit about like, cognitive function and short-term memory with weed. But for me,
what's that? I forgot what you said.
When I stopped smoking, like I realized like, oh shit, I'm way smarter than I thought.
Yeah.
And like that, those faculties just kind of came back online, and I got really interested in what was going on in the biohacking space. Like the people that are interested in peak performance and, like memory champions and people that are, just interested in like how can we take stuff to the next level? And I started listening to a bunch of their podcasts and material, and I started using some of the nutrition techniques and some, supplements and stuff, and seeing if I could like get myself back to a place. Well, really, like I was trying to just see what was possible and with my own mind. And I got really into it and basically just tried to absorb all that stuff, as best I could. And what ended up happening was like, I really feel like, because I all of a sudden had this kind of extra energy, I had more mental cognition and space to actually like do the psychological work. I started going to therapy for the first time, working on myself, but it like all kind of tied together where like I had really tweaked the way that my biology was working for the better. Stopped smoking weed, started eating better, started exercising more, started tracking some things too, and kind of looking at what's going on under the hood.
Was that exciting? Was that exciting for you? Because I know like the more the longer my journey goes, and the more that I continue to learn about myself and different things, like today I'm going to learn from talking to you about epigenetics and this really cool shit. Like it's exciting to me. Did that journey that you're talking about, was there a lot of excitement there and like, damn, I get to learn and like I'm defrosting my brain, and it's not so much about the weed or the alcohol or the drug or whatever it is. It's just about like, damn, I'm on this really cool journey and there's a lot of shit to learn.
Yeah, exactly, man. And it's like that feedback loop that you start to generate where it's like, oh, I'm actually generating, like, I used to really laugh at the idea of like a natural high or getting high on life or something like that. Like that shit's for losers. But like once I started to experience like, oh, wait, I'm actually generating like all this really positive emotion from just learning and from trying new things and like getting good results from it, that just sort of feeds back on itself and like pushes things forward for sure.
And that shit's real too, because after like a good hard workout, I'll find myself like I want to talk like, hey man, that was a good workout, huh? Wasn't it? Like if we're in a class or whatever, and you get that natural kind of high. And same thing. I was like, back in the day, I would have said that's probably not possible. And it's stupid. I could just smoke a joint instead or whatever, totally different though.
Right. And, actually one of the things I've been thinking about lately, and maybe you'll appreciate this, is like conversations like this, where you get to be a little bit vulnerable and like talk about your experience and connect with someone who's had a similar experience, creates similar highs. It's
totally, bro.
That sense of connection and and you can take that energy and like ride with it, like I'll go, do some cool shit after this podcast. I'm up and elevated, right?
Yeah. Hell yeah. But so you were kind of getting into you're on this journey to a quest to kind of experience more, find more, like and you started eating better, healthy, exercising, cut out the weed. By the way, were you a bong ripper, a blunt smoker, a joint like what was your
I was a joint smoker. I smoked a lot of joints and a lot of bowls. I always liked water pipes, but I never really had a good collection. That was something that I friends. I really like joints.
Yeah. Joints is like the standard. We did around here, blunts were extremely popular at some point. So it was always blunts. We used to go facial. We called it, I'm going to go facial. Just everyone went facial, not bragging about it. It's funny. But at the same time, hey, I just figured I'd ask. So anyways,
it was a lot of blunts in high school for me. A lot of like getting in a car and cruising around the blunt and like,
Well, I found it funny too, that you used to have to buy like a pack of Swishers, right? You'd buy a whole pack and you'd have to break them up and roll the blunt stuff. And then not long after, that industry figured out that, wait a minute, no one's really smoking our cigars. They're just using them to wrap weed in. So then they started making singles, of like wraps. Yeah. And then that whole market came out. It's kind of funny, man.
So I know you said you maybe you can cut this. I actually realized my computer's not plugged in and it's going to die. I got to go run and grab my power cord.
Oh yeah, that's cool, man. Do it. Do your thing, bro. Go grab it real quick. I can sit here and yap my ass off about back in the day, hot boxing. Who remembers hot boxing, by the way? Do you remember hot boxing? Did anybody hot box? Man, we hot boxed the shit out of some cars, out of some bathrooms, out of some rooms, out of some closets. That was the business, man. Out of some studios too. Oh man, that was the fun stuff. What is that noise? Is that my dog? I think my dog's trying to come out here. Well, David's grabbing his charger real quick to plug it in. And for all you potheads out there, man, or ex-potheads or whatever, exactly what we're talking about. And I was telling David before we got started, and some of my homies who listen to the show may appreciate this. Our old motto, which I became a part of, was we don't get high, we stay high. We were just high all the time. And interesting stuff. Okay, did you get your, I'm just blabbing away here. Did you get your,
yeah.
Okay, cool. You got to go.
Yeah.
All right,
sorry
perfect.
About that.
No, all good, bro.
Yeah. So just to kind of connect the dots on how I got into the epigenetics piece, my background's actually in music. I produce electronic music, still went to school for audio engineering.
Did you recognize Humans music on the intro?
No, I'll have to check it. I liked it. I'll have to check it out. Yeah.
My boy Robbie and Peter, they're from Canada, and they are it's just the two of them, and they have Humans, the group Humans, and they got a bunch of good tracks, bro. Definitely check it out. I'm a musician myself too. We got a lot in common, bro. So I need to shut the fuck up and let you talk though. So go ahead.
Yeah. So I ended up getting hired by this medical clinic in town to work on some like meditation and brainwave entrainment programs, like things that are designed to just calm the nervous system. And they were looking for, someone who can produce music and kind of had an interest in the health side of things. And right when I got hired by them, the head doctor started this training program for nutritional genetics and epigenetics because he had been using this in his clinical practice with his clients, kind of with like the health optimization and wellness piece. He was like a real expensive, high-end, like private concierge type doctor doing really like high-end stuff for people, private kind of pay stuff.
Yeah.
And he was getting asked all over the place by these other doctors, like, hey, will you train us how to do this? This is kind of a new technology. There's not anyone teaching this yet. Because he had been taking just what was coming out of the research labs and starting to see if he could apply it to his clients. And he was having really good success. And so I got hired on to do audio engineering stuff. And he kind of recognized, like, oh, you've been studying like a lot of this biohacking stuff. You already have like a lot of the same information that would, like I would train a coach on. And he asked me if I wanted to basically be a beta tester for his training program. And so I went through it. He kind of tested out how to teach it with me and a couple other people working there before he went real public with it. And so now, there's a couple hundred coaches that he's trained worldwide. And I've just happened to kind of be there at the right place, right time, and realized, like, oh, I've kind of sponged up all this information. I probably could help some people with it.
Yeah.
And just
sure.
Went from there.
So what is epigenetics? Like, how do you explain what epigenetics is for someone out there listening who has no clue? They've never heard that word before.
Yeah, absolutely. So, when I was in high school, probably you were in high school biology class, you probably got taught what they call the central dogma of biology, which is genes code for proteins, which code for traits. So like the specific pattern in your DNA, right? Like the arrangement of all these little letters or create like the reason why you have certain color hair color, and I have certain color eye color, skin color, like all these things come back to the way our DNA is kind of arranged. And for a really long time, that's what they thought, it was just that was it, right? Like you're kind of stuck with certain genetic predispositions to diseases, and you're stuck, basically with what you got. Yeah. And then in the 80s, they started finding these other layers to this where that wasn't the whole picture. And the science really got interesting in the 90s and 2000s is when it really started to come together and take off. So it's really pretty new. But what it describes is there's basically this other control layer on top of your DNA that allows genes to change their expression over time. And what that might mean is, say, if you are exposed to certain toxins, like your body's going to create inflammation, and it does it actually at the genetic level. And it's really cool. It's like your body is designed to dynamically respond to all these things in the environment. Like if you're smoking weed every day, your body is going to shift some genes that have to do with your cannabinoid receptors in order to, and that's what tolerance looks like, right? Like all of a sudden, like you can just smoke so much more. Yeah. So much more. And what's happening is your body's saying, all right, we have all this THC coming in all of a sudden. We need to shift the function kind of at these underlying levels to make up for that in some ways. And your body does that in response to like almost every single thing you can think of, like nutrition, stress, exercise. It's like every single aspect of being human has an epigenetic component to it. It's
constantly fluctuating or right. Adjusting or adapting to the amount or what is put into your body.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, and you can kind of conceptualize it like each gene that is going to code for, say, a different aspect of your biochemistry, like neurotransmitters or hormones. So like they've basically got these little, like a dimmer switch on it. You can turn it up or down, and your body's just really smart and says like, all right, well, it's time to turn it up or down. And so like, this is what like trauma and PTSD, that's a big component of that, where your body is exposed to a really traumatic event, and then all of a sudden it's like, all right, well, we need to be like up and ready for the next time this happens. Yeah. So we're going to pump up the stress hormones and the things that are going to keep you on alert. And it also happens on a daily basis too. Like just the way that your body regulates like hormones that help you go to sleep and help you wake up in the morning. That's kind of on this epigenetic clock. So you have things that, you kind of get shifted overall from the environment. You have things that are just naturally kind of going in cycles and moving back and forth. And then the other piece to it that's really interesting is that it can actually be passed from generation to generation. there's a lot of evidence now that these epigenetic marks, they're basically these little chemical groups that kind of just get attached on top of your DNA, can be passed from what they've seen in mice up to like 10 generations.
Really?
So things like,
Damn.
yeah. So like trauma, from your grandparents being in World War II or something like that can impact what they've found, like stress response. And that's actually like part of my story is my mom's parents were in the Holocaust in concentration camps.
Wow.
And like looking at our family dynamic and family history, like you can see some of that stress and anxiety,
Wow.
that's kind of reinforced both from like a relational level, like
Yeah.
just the way you react with people, but then also I think, on the biochemical level of like being more prone
So
to
even,
produce
even
stress
though,
hormone.
yeah. And even though that, you weren't there at that time, what you're saying is, through epigenetics or genes or coding, I don't quite grasp exactly how all that entails, but, that stress, let's just use stress for an example, that stress could have, or has been passed down to you, even 2, 3, and it could be passed down to your kids and so forth, through that.
Yeah. And there's good studies on it. Like there's good generational
So,
studies.
there's facts to back it up, and there's science or whatever. Yeah, that's crazy, man. So I wonder, and I don't want to derail us too much, but on this, so I'll just kind of leave it and feel free to respond, or if you do want to say something about it. But like the whole alcoholism is a disease type of thing, like I wonder if they've ever found that in that, the science behind that, those genes or whatever that comes back around and shows similar to what you're talking about, stress or alcohol or whatever. I mean, I know that's a highly debatable subject. I'm not saying either way at this time, but I don't know, just something I thought off the top of my head real quick.
Yeah. I mean, I think that when you got to look at the holistic picture of like what's driving alcoholism, right?
Yeah.
Like there's definitely some genetic predispositions to the way like you metabolize alcohol.
Sure. Yeah.
Some things like that. But then at the same time, like, yeah, if you're someone that is kind of, your nervous system's wired to need a substance to relax, like you're going to be more prone to seek that out.
Sure.
And like, and this isn't just with stress, like they found, stuff like you can be more prone to diabetes or obesity. But at the same time, you can also be prone to being healthier if your grandparents and great grandparents were like eating, and just living in natural rhythms.
Is lifespan a part of that at all? Like how long people live?
I would imagine so. I mean, all these factors are going to impact it to some degree.
Yeah, true.
But what it really like kind of reinforces is like all the, like the Native American and other wisdom traditions that say like what you do impacts, 7 generations down the road. Like it really kind of gives the science to that.
So what about food? Like how is food a part of epigenetics, and how does that play a part, I guess, in just a general lifestyle, but too, if we equate it to someone who's in recovery, who's recovering from substance abuse or any type of opioid abuse, anything, how does nutrition play a strong role in that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, your body epigenetically is going to respond to different foods. And when you see people that are gaining weight, losing weight, like there's an epigenetic component to that. And from their perspective of recovery, I think the goal is better self-regulation, no matter like what form of recovery you're doing, like the more ability to just, be comfortable with where you're at and, not have to reach for the more destructive substance to kind of get you there.
Sure.
Right. And I think that there's, when you're looking at how food is going to impact, like things like anxiety or inflammation, which is going to just make you not be able to think as well. A lot of what I do with clients is kind of help them see, all right, which of these foods are going to create less inflammation in your body, which ones are going to create more. And then from an epigenetic perspective, like, can we switch on and off certain genes that we know are going to, create better outcomes and give you more more energy, more ability to focus on what you're trying to do and where you want to go.
So I think it's like because everybody's different, right? Everyone's makeup is different. Everyone different culture, different way they grew up, whatever. So something that would work for someone may not work for somebody else at the same time.
Yeah, totally. Let me give you an example. So, I have a call with a client that I'm going to tell him that he shouldn't eat a lot of nuts, which like people usually think that nuts are really healthy. And for a lot of people, they are a healthy type of fat. But for some people, that can actually cause more inflammation. So it's like knowing those types of little things and looking at your genetics is a really great way to kind of quickly just get a shortcut to knowing what is going to help with that.
Got it.
You know,
so how do you look at your genetics? That's something that I'm assuming that you help with as a coach.
Yeah. So that's there's a couple different options out there. I use a private lab to do my testing with, and it's like there's 23andMe and the big companies out there. Yeah. I don't use them anymore because they sell data to all kinds of pharmaceutical companies and stuff like that. So we've contracted with a private lab where we data is really secure.
Good for you, David.
But it's a simple cheek swab test. Like you just take a little swab, put it in a vial, send it off to our lab. It takes a couple of weeks to get back. And then, basically what it is we've amassed all this information, and this is like the doctor that I was talking about. This is kind of his lifetime work. He's taken all of these studies where they'll take a group of people, say this group of people is obese and this group of people isn't, and they'll put them on the same diet and see what happens and try and isolate certain genes that like are going to cause people to respond differently. And based on when you can look at a couple hundred of these things stacked together and get a really good feel for like how the system is wired. And you can look at all kinds of stuff that's also really interesting in the recovery area too, as far as like how your dopamine system is wired.
Really, just through getting those results back, you can break down the dopamine part of it.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Yeah, you can look at some genes that like are code for like the dopamine receptors, and like some people are going to be prone to have some less sensitivity there. And when you're in any type of addictive pattern, you're going to continue to increase that dopamine resistance over time. Need more and more. But it can give some interesting insights into like, okay, here might be some of the reasons why, and here might be some strategies that we can use to epigenetically kind of shift the way those receptors are functioning a little bit. So do
you have and if you don't mind sharing yourself, like for you, like what does your general diet look like? Like what kind of foods do you stay away from, or do you eat more of that really is a good fit for you?
Yeah, well, I'll give you an example for me and my wife, because we're pretty different.
Okay. Sure.
It's a good example of like, actually looking at the genes really can kind of give you insight on why she was gaining weight while I was losing it, eating a certain way. So I tend to do pretty high fat, low carb, kind of moderate, lower protein. I stay away from gluten, more because my wife is really sensitive to it. I'm like, I can handle it, but it's just easier for me not to.
Yeah.
But for me, I one of the biggest shifts was really changing my fat intake, and going more originally with kind of like a keto approach. And that was kind of the first thing I did back when I was in my mid-20s that really like shifted everything and gave me a lot more brain power, because the keto approach will change the way your brain especially is metabolizing energy.
I tried the keto and I just fucking drank butter coffee all day long. And it's like one of those things that, and I didn't do it. I didn't do it like it was supposed to be done. You know what I'm saying? And so I think like with that, in those things, like you really need to follow, well, I can't speak for anyone, but for myself, I really needed to follow, specifically what to do. And I didn't do that. And so I didn't see those results. And then you get a lot of people go, well, fucking keto doesn't work. Well, it didn't work for me because I didn't follow exactly what to do. I just drink a shitload of coffee with butter in it all day. You know what I mean? That's not going to probably be the most healthy thing for you. So there really is a science into breaking it down, how to make it work for you, right?
Yeah, totally. And it may not have been really suited to the way your body's wired.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
I started really getting into the ketos thing and started just making dinners and, food for me and my partner like that all the time. And she started just gaining weight really fast while I was getting lean and
so it wasn't
healthy.
Working for her, but it was working for you. Yeah.
And she was pissed.
Oh, dude. Yeah. They do not like, even like my wife and I started going back to a new gym a couple of months ago, and she was talking there. She's all, what the hell? You don't even like, it's so easy for you to like just lose weight and whatever. And I don't know if that's a male female makeup or it's just everybody individually, but yeah, they definitely do not like that when it works a little bit faster for us, and rightfully so,
Right. And I don't think it's a male female thing. I think it's really pretty individual, because I have some clients that are female that will lose weight real fast, and then some males that take a long time.
Got it. So back to the genetics and the makeup thing. I mean, it's really going to depend on that.
Yeah. And so just to, kind of close that loop, this was before I started learning about the genetics piece. And then when I was able to look at her genes and my genes, I was like, oh, whoa, this makes a ton of sense. Like, you have almost every single marker that would make high fat a really bad idea, like keto, not a good idea for you. So now the game I play is, okay, how can I make meals that I can modify for myself that are also, good for her?
Got it. That's crazy how much that if you don't know that, you think, oh, and I'm just using keto as an example. You could take any of the carnivore diet, whatever diet, there is. Yeah, that's great. My buddy over there, Mike, he lost 35 pounds and gained a shitload of muscle, and then all of a sudden you try it and you're like, what the hell, man? I gained 35 pounds and I didn't get any muscle. And it's just like, it's every person's different. So is that the only way to find that out, though, is to do that, is to do that swab and get those results?
You can always experiment over time, but it's a lot faster to look at the genetics. Save some energy and trouble.
Yeah, sure.
But for me, it's, and really the way I approach it, it's not about like going on a diet. It's just about finding the nutritional style that's just going to like work for you over time, and I think that talking about recovery and like just generating a healthy lifestyle, it's just going to be another piece that kind of keeps you in the right direction as far as, really learning about how you can, just create those positive feedback loops for yourself and feel good. Yeah.
So let's kind of transition into this endocannabinoid system, if we could. Let's maybe break down what that is for someone who wouldn't know.
Yes. So, and again, this is something that's pretty a new understanding. So, I had to think about how to say this. So cannabinoids are these chemicals that are found both in our bodies, in animals' bodies, and in certain plants, especially the cannabis plant. They're named after the cannabis plant. And the main psychoactive one there is THC, as most of your listeners probably know. And there's all these other ones like CBD and CBN, and a lot of ones that have some pretty cool research behind them now for treating all kinds of stuff that's not psychoactive. And basically what classifies something as a cannabinoid is that it is shaped a certain way as a chemical, and it responds to these receptors that we have in our body called cannabinoid receptors, similar to how you have serotonin receptors or dopamine receptors. It's just a built-in part of our body. And the really cool thing is that it's this really deep underlying system. Like every single cell in your body has cannabinoid receptors on them, which is one of the reasons why like people say the CBD can treat like every known thing under the sun. Like if someone has had success with it, because it's so ubiquitous in the body and it's just kind of everywhere.
Is that true? Do you think? I mean, in your opinion or perspective?
I don't think that it's a panacea. I think that some people, because of the way their endocannabinoid system wired, it will have good results, but I don't think that it works that way for everyone. And certainly the research doesn't support that. There's certain things that it seems to be really pretty good for anxiety. The stress related things seem to be some of the best response. Like the PTSD stuff has pretty good results on it. There's some stuff for like,
well, I'm sorry. I was going to say, once again, it's even back to like the keto thing we were talking about. It's kind of dependent on the person and their system, their makeup, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And so this is an area that I got really super interested in a couple of years ago. After I started learning about the nutritional side, I was like, wait a minute, there's research out there on how people's endocannabinoid systems are wired differently. Like, that's really interesting to me as a longtime pothead.
So we keep dropping these little hints in here, and every time one of us mentions it, I just hear smoke weed every day, like the little sample. Right, so I might have to plug that in at some point. But I'm sorry, go ahead, man.
I want to hear it in the recording. So I started really diving into all the research that's out there, and it really turns out that there's these underlying biological differences to why some people are attracted to weed and some people really aren't. Like, when I was in high school and I would get certain friends to smoke with me, and they're like, they didn't have a good time, didn't really like it. I thought they were just crazy. I didn't get it because I had such a good experience with it. And then it turns out that there's actually a bunch of studies that have looked at, like, okay, how do people respond to weed, and what is their endocannabinoid system looking like at the genetic level? And there's something that they call it the endocannabinoid deficiency hypothesis, where they're basically saying that, like, the reason why CBD or THC or other cannabinoid seems to work well for some people is that they're naturally lower in their own endocannabinoids that they produce in their body, because we produce these ones that they're not psychoactive, they just kind of regulate function in the body. And so there's certain genes you can look at that can help you understand, like, are you someone that has lower levels of endocannabinoids? I have both gene variants that are associated with lower levels, and it's not surprising to me that I've always been attracted to it. But there's all kinds of stuff. I mean, stuff that looks at like how people break down THC, and some people that are just like super blown open by edibles, like it's probably because they just don't break it down as much, and so it builds up in their system much quicker. So
basically, someone who smokes a lot of pot, if they found out they have a low cannabinoid system, they could, and someone says, well, you smoke too much pot, they could basically say, well, fuck you, I got a low cannabinoid system, that's why I smoke so much pot.
Yeah, I mean, I think for some people that's one side of it. And then, like you were mentioning before, I don't know if it was in the earlier recording or this one that's actually been recorded, but that you felt like you were actually like pretty functional on it.
Yeah, totally. Mow the lawn, do the dishes, go to work, whatever. It was just like what we did,
Yeah. And some people, I mean, there's all these studies too that look at these variants in relation to cognitive function. So like, and I'll give you an example. There's this one gene called COMT that they've studied that seems to impact people's short-term memory after smoking weed by up to 40%, depending on which variant they have. So like 40% is a lot when you're looking at like scores on a test where you have to like remember numbers and letters and that type of thing, and see how good you are at that.
Yeah.
So certain people, are going to be more functional, and certain people are going to not be able to function well. And so it's this kind of whole big, network.
So really, because I've always heard it explained as like, this is this strain of weed, and not to say, whether it's edibles or whatever. So it could be not necessarily the strain. That's some really good, shit or whatever. It's more dependent on the person's system, on the high that they're going to get. are they up? Are they able to function? Or some people freak the fuck out. I certainly had my fair share of freak out moments too, of just paranoia and I'm way too high right now. I don't like this. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of factors into that, but at the end of the day, it really comes back to your system and how it's built up, which is fucking crazy. I've never thought about it from that perspective before.
Right. And doesn't it like generate more empathy for the people that you know that don't have good experiences on it? That was a big wake up call for me, where I was like, shit, I should not have been trying to get my girlfriend in high school to smoke weed with me all the time.
Yeah, no wonder she freaked out and ran down the street with her shirt. I don't know, whatever. But yeah, it's crazy, man.
Yeah, totally. And you know, strain does impact it for sure. But I think that, you know, some people, no matter what strain you give them, they're not going to have a good time. And then, you know, it's going to, you know, it's a question of what percentage is being impacted by that.
So what about if we take out, so let's kind of go into like the CBD part of it. It's obviously a hot topic right now. If you take out the THC though, from CBD, how does that affect the cannabinoid system, and what's kind of the relationship to a person, especially maybe to one who's in recovery who uses CBD?
Yeah, I mean, I think CBD is a really good option for people that are looking for something that's not addictive and not, you know, non-psychoactive. I mean, it's a great thing to substitute if you're just trying to like have, you know, smoke something that's enjoyable, right?
Yeah,
it's
relaxed a little bit. That kind of
yeah. You know, CBD is interesting because THC directly activates the cannabinoid receptors.
Got it.
CBD is a very, very weak activator of them. And what it really does more than anything is it kind of boosts your body's own levels of endocannabinoids, which, you know, you're getting some of the same functionality, like you're activating those receptors, but you're kind of doing it in a way that's a little more gentle, kind of getting your body to produce more of its own natural kind of thing there. So, you know, I think it's a great option for people that are dealing with anxiety and recovery, and it's worth trying. You know, it doesn't work the same way for everyone, but it's, you know, I think it's a pretty powerful tool, especially in the anxiety realm.
What are like, I've heard anxiety, depression. I'm just naming off some of the things I've heard that CBD can potentially help with: anxiety, depression. I've heard joint pain. Is that, have you heard anything about joint pain in CBD? Does it help? Are there any studies on that?
It can be. I think if it's more a result of like rheumatoid arthritis, where there's more of like an autoimmune thing going on in the body, that might be more responsive.
What about headaches?
The chronic, yeah, I mean, headaches, I haven't seen any actual studies on it. I've heard a lot of good reports on it.
Yeah.
You know,
go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead. You said the main ones.
The main ones I've seen are anxiety. There's some stuff with like Parkinson's. Obviously, like the seizure piece is huge for some people. Seems to be really effective for certain types of rare seizure disorders. Sleep is, some people have really had good responses with sleep. But it's interesting. It's like you get a bunch of people that say it works really well, and then other people that say it doesn't work well for them. So, but at the same time, it's very low risk. You know, like it's not something that like has a lot of side effects or, you know, is going to cause problems. So at the very least, I think it's worth trying.
Yeah. Yeah, sure. And I was going to mention like my wife, you know, and I guess my question is is it THC or the CBD, you know, aspect of it? But she had migraine after she had 2 C-sections with both of our kids. And so after our first daughter was born, is really when she started getting really, really bad migraines, you know, and this went on for years. And so the doctor, of course, prescribed her, you know, Percocet, that kind of stuff. And it just would mess her up for days, you know what I mean? To get sick, and she hated taking it and stuff. And as soon as she got a little vape pen, and she starts smoking a little bit when that came on, and now it's not like magic where it would just magically go away, but it relieved it, and it never got to the point where she would be hemped up for, you know, a day, 2 days, and having to take these opiates just to deal with the pain, you know? So we've had some firsthand experience with it helping her, which is, and I think kind of what this has been an ongoing thing throughout this conversation is like, what works for someone may not work for somebody else. So it's really up to you doing the homework and the research and finding guys like you who coach people in this kind of stuff, to help give them the information that they need to make the best decision.
Totally. And like, you know, I think it's a question too of like, you know, how motivated are to take it to the next level? Like for example, with nutrition, like there's going to be basics that are going to apply to everyone, right? Like just eat whole foods, eat fruits and veggies, you know, stay away from processed food and McDonald's and that kind of stuff. And like, that's the basis. Like if you're doing that, you're like better than like 90% of people out there.
Yeah.
But you know, if you're still having issues, or you're like, all right, now that I'm like sober, I wonder what I'm capable of. Like if you see that as something that you could utilize as kind of like a jumping off platform, then like, yeah, there's room to grow, and there's room to experiment and really see what the potential is.
Yeah. It's good stuff, man. I'm looking at the time now. What do you got? About 7 minutes left. I got 10. So 10 or not 10 minutes, a little less than 10 minutes, but, okay, cool, man. So, well, let me stop right there. Did we miss anything in those two real quick? And I know we're trying to stuff a ton of information into 50 minutes, and maybe, you know, we'll have to definitely connect again, and maybe we can do a part 2 of this. Cause there's so much stuff here that it's impossible to even scratch the surface of it in an hour.
We can go deeper and get granular on some stuff for sure.
That'd be awesome. What is there anything that we missed maybe in the epigenetics or the endocannabinoid that you wanted to point out, or anything before we kind of get to the work you're doing, where folks can find you at, all that good stuff?
Yeah. I mean, I really want to kind of come back to, I suppose, like it's not the substance itself, it's how you're using it. And just kind of hammer that one home, I guess a bit more, because, you know, I'm sure you've talked about it on the show before that, you know, just about anything can be addictive. And it's a question of like, is it actually causing a problem for you, you know? And I think the cannabis piece is like such a strong example of that. Like how, you know, for me or other people that have found like, okay, this is actually not functional, versus it can be a real medicine for some people. Like I have someone that I'm really close to who uses it to manage seizures, and like that's you can watch them stop.
Wow.
When, you know, it's remarkable.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think you know, everyone's journey is a little bit different, and it's nice to kind of get the objective data on like, okay, what are the underlying biological things that I can do to support me on that journey. Yeah.
That's good.
You know, I enjoy it.
Yeah, I love it, man. Every this is a really good point, dude. Like everyone is on their own journey. There's no, you know, no need to judge, no need to worry about, you know, other people, why they're doing this, how they're doing that. And I think like, for me, once I started to get an understanding of that, and it only happened when I got sober, because obviously a lot of things started to change. Life became a lot easier too, you know, and I think to your point, you know, it's really about intention. Are you using, whether it's CBD with no THC, or whether it's, you know, weed for seizures or edibles, whatever it is, what's the intention of that? Are you using it to get high and escape, or are you using it for a medicine? You know what I mean? Like there's plenty of, just like same with opiates. I mean, people have to use opiates. They have severe injuries, you know, burn victims, back pain, all that stuff. What's your intention? Is it for pain, or is it just to get high? So to bring that back, it's not so much about the substance, it's about the person and where, you know, or why we're using what we're using. And even back to the beginning of the conversation, you started to uncover these things on why you were smoking the copious amounts of bud that you were doing. And that was really where the answer lied in. So really interesting stuff, man.
Yeah, man. And I think, you know, I don't want to ignore the big picture too, is, and we touch on it a bunch of times here, is that, you know, it's really about getting real with yourself and like
Sure.
really discovering like what's my most authentic expression, right? And it's like you can do all the nutrition and supplements and all that stuff, but if you're not really addressing the underlying emotional piece, like that's really where the juice is, you know?
Yeah. And a lot of that for me came back to personal responsibility. Like, and I know that, you know, that could be a debatable, you know, phrase or whatever, when you're talking about someone who's extremely addicted to, let's say, like heroin or something. Like, I understand that. So there's definitely issues with that. I'm not undermining any of that, but at the end of the day, you know, we have a choice to make. What kind of life do we want to lead? What kind of food do I want to put in my body? What kind of exercise do I want to get, you know, from drugs, alcohol, all that stuff? At the end of the day, it really starts with us, man. So where can folks find you at? Like, tell me a little bit about your platform, your coaching business, how you help people, whatever you want, man. Instagram, Facebook, whatever you got.
Yeah, absolutely. So my website is david-krantz, KRANTZ.com. And people can go there, check out. I've got some articles on nutritional genetics, and I've got a whole hour presentation people can watch on the endocannabinoid system and some of the genetics involved with that. And I also do free 30-minute consultations for anyone that's interested. You know, if you're in recovery and curious about how you can optimize your nutrition and really kind of hone in on the things that you can do to, you know, get to where you want to be, happy to have a conversation and see if I can help you. And other than that, I'm on Instagram at Whole Systems Health is my handle there. At
Whole WHOLE Systems.
Mm-hmm. Whole Systems Health.
Systems Health. I'm just putting these notes in because I'm going to make sure, guys, that I have these in the show notes too. So if you just want to click on them, you're able to do that as well. David, man, it's been a pleasure, bro. Like, man, I feel like we got some good stuff in under an hour or a little under an hour, but at the same time, man, there's so much stuff to this. So we'll definitely keep in touch and reconnect back and maybe do another episode in a month or a couple months or something, maybe in the fall.
That sounds great to me. We'll shoot around some topic ideas and
cool.
Get a little more focused. Sounds great.
Yeah.
Really enjoyed the conversation.
Right on, man. Thanks, bro. Check us out at thatsoberguy.com. Connect with us on Instagram at realthatsoberguy, on Twitter at Shane Raymer. Once again, that's david-krantz.com, david-krantz.com. And David, man, thanks again, bro. It's been a pleasure, man.
Yeah, absolutely.
Keep my head on straight. I've been trying.
You gotta go.
To keep my head on straight. You still say that I don't know anything about you. Oh, I don't know anything about you, but I know what you do in the back room. And you still say that I don't know anything about you. Oh, I don't know anything about you, but I know what you do in the